because it shows like, hey, our stars are, not performing the way they want to, but we can still win in that regard.
Welcome into Northside Territory, Foul Territory Network's Cubs podcast. I'm Sahadev Sharma. With me soon will be Patrick Mooney. We have Katie Wu as our guest, the Athletics Cardinals beat writer. Patrick and I are your Cubs beat writers, and we are covering the red hot Cubs apparently, and that's why I'm recording this right now, because the Cubs have just swept the Baltimore Orioles. The Orioles came into this series as the best team in the AL, and somehow the Cubs, who I think many had left for dead, have turned it around here, shut down that vaunted Orioles offense, and I think that's the story right now. As good as this Cubs offense has looked the last few days, maybe at points during the Angels series, a nice 8-0 win on Thursday. That's great. The offense needs to blow teams out, win games like they did this week. But it's the pitching. It's been the pitching all season long. Justin Steele is backing up last season's fifth place Cy Young season. He is an all-star level pitcher. He's a Cy Young caliber pitcher. I know he's not on the all-star team, but that's only because he was hurt. And it's looking more and more like that blip. It was exactly that, a blip after he returned from the injured list. He is a dominant pitcher. Shota Imanaga's an all-star, and they have two studs at the front of their rotation right now, which is giving them life and keeping them in games. And it seemed like it was being wasted in the first few months of the season, and here we are. They're still not at 500. This isn't reason to celebrate, but they have life because of a mediocre NL and a dominant pitching staff right now. And I shouldn't ignore Jameson Taillon, who has been brilliant as well. Multiple pitchers with sub-3 ERAs. We have Katie Wu on to talk about this upcoming series. That was recorded earlier before the Cubs finished off the sweep against the Orioles. We'll get to that soon. I just wanted to touch on a couple topics here, but Michael Busch is looking like a great, brilliant trade by Jed Hoyer and Carter Hawkins. They targeted a prospect that was blocked, that was ready for the big leagues and blocked in a great system in LA. And they went after him. We'll see if it was a hefty price. Zaire Hope and Jackson Ferris are young prospects at the lower levels. What they're doing right now doesn't really matter because Michael Busch has a 853 OPS right now. He is one of the Cubs' hottest hitters, but the reality is he's not their only hot hitter. Seiya Suzuki is having another bounce back stretch here, really impressing. That's a 141 weighted runs created plus for Michael Busch. I mean, that's probably, my guess is that's going to be that's around top 15, top 20 in all of baseball. That's you know what, I'll tell you right now, it's top 18. It's 18th in baseball, tied for 17th actually with Brandon Nimmo and Josh Smith. That's the type of hitter you need leading your offense, frankly. If you don't have Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani, this is kind of as good as it gets at that level. Say Suzuki had another great game, 3 for 5 with a triple and a double, 2 doubles. Ian Happ, not his best game, but they have 3 guys with OPS over 800 right now. And you hope that Dansby Swanson, the game he had, is a glimmer of things to come. I feel like there were some balls that he drove recently that he wasn't getting rewarded for. You have to hope that's this is him turning a corner. Let's touch on a couple other newsworthy items here. Obviously, Cody Bellinger out. I believe what's happened is it's a fractured left. Let's make sure. Since I was not in Baltimore, I want to make sure what Patrick wrote. It's a fractured left middle finger. It sounds like he's out through, like he's shut down through the All-Star break, and then they're going to run some tests and like check his range of motion in the finger. We don't really have a timeline here. It's a blow. It obviously is, but he wasn't dominating on offense. You have to hope that these guys stay hot, and guys like I mentioned, like Dansby, Swanson, you have to hope that the guys that are hot can kind of stay hot, and then Dansby it gets going, gets in a rhythm. Christopher Morel gets in a rhythm. Other players step up. Alexander Canario has been called up. I think it's unfair to expect him to light it up. He's got a ton of power. I don't think he was dominating at AAA or anything like that. Not recently. He can get on fire though. He certainly has that capability. Nico Horner's been looking better at the plate. Miles Mastrobuoni's looking a little comfortable. My guess is you may see more Mastrobuoni at third base and Morel at DH. And then Canario will get some starts against lefties. That's what makes sense to me, and just going along with what I've observed from what Craig Counsell does. So I think that's probably your expectation there. It is a blow. It absolutely hurts. It's not ideal to have Cody Bellinger on the IL. I just don't think it's as big as a loss as it would have been last year at this time. Frankly, he was carrying the offense. Right now, other guys are carrying the offense, an offense that's suddenly turned around. I think the little more concerning, in my opinion, is kind of the status quo for Jordan Wicks and Ben Brown. It sounds like they've kind of plateaued in their comebacks. Patrick tweeted that Wicks, which is an oblique injury, and Ben Brown are both still symptomatic and only at the stage of playing catch. Counsell's quoted as saying it's going a little slow right now. It sounds like Wicks' earliest he'll be back is August. Ben Brown, this is kind of what we've been hearing. Whenever I talk to him in the clubhouse, it's kind of like playing catch, a bullpen here and there. Still kind of feeling things. You'd love to have one or both back in the rotation, beef up the bullpen, that they'll have decisions to make at some point when all these guys return. We knew that going in, they weren't going to be back before the All-Star break. So you hope that there's some positive momentum for Ben Brown during the All-Star break, because I think his return, it'll be interesting to see how they use him, because I think his return could really impact either the rotation or the bullpen. If it's the rotation, it definitely, either way, wherever he returns, it impacts the bullpen, right? Because it's going to shift things around. So I think that's a fascinating aspect here. You want these pitchers to get healthy. They still have others that are getting healthy, like Julian Merriweather. Mark Leiter Jr. is back. Javier Assad is expected to be back this weekend. That's the last I heard, but it's still TBD. We just got the probables for this weekend in St. Louis. Hendricks on Friday, Wisniewski and TBD on Saturday. That very well could be Assad. They could be holding off just to be 100% sure that he's both healthy and that they get through Friday clean, and it makes sense to bring back Assad because he's probably going to be on some sort of pitch limit. Tyone on Sunday to wrap up the unofficial first half here. We'll see. Obviously a huge 4-game set. It's going to be disgustingly humid, just like it was in Baltimore. Their pitching has been great. You have to hope that Hendricks bounces back and at least keeps them in the game, and the offense kind of gets rolling again, or continues to roll, because I do think this is, you don't want – I think you can get away with a split here, and it's all right. It's not the end of the world. But after sweeping Baltimore, I think you want more, right? You just do. You want to keep this momentum rolling. It's going to be really hard to win 4 in 3 days. It just is. I know St. Louis just got swept in a doubleheader, but it's just hard to win those. Ultimately, it's not the easiest thing to do. It's Sonny Gray on Friday. That's going to be a tough game. They beat Corbin Burns on Wednesday, so it's not impossible. This offense is feeling good, looking good. Who knows what happens? Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson on Saturday, Miles Michaelis on Sunday. I'm very curious to see how they do, what they can do, and if they can keep this rolling. 500 at the break would be huge. Obviously, that's the best they can be. But if they're anywhere from 3 to 2 games under, I think that's a huge win. Well, I guess the best they can, it's either 4 or 2 games under, right? 4 or 2, I think you take it. And you feel good about where they're at. A split is acceptable not what you want, but it's acceptable, and it puts you in position to kind of get things rolling in the second half. Hope they're healthier. Mike Tauchman could be returning soon in the second half. He's been basically, in the way Cody Bellinger's been playing, that's not like some huge drop off from Cody Bellinger to Mike Tauchman. It just isn't. That's the reality of the way they've been playing. Obviously, the ceiling's higher with what Cody Bellinger can do, and you know he stands out defensively at times, especially when he's playing right field. But this weekend is fascinating, and it feels weird to say that because 4 days ago it was not the feeling anyone had, because I don't think anybody expected things to turn around in Baltimore against a team that's young and exciting and looks, you know, poised to be aggressive at the deadline and then make some noise in October. We'll see how the weekend goes. Let's get to Katie Woo. She is great as always, and kind of see what to expect this weekend and how the Cardinals have been doing. Katie, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm good, guys. Just getting ready for one last Cardinals-Cubs series before the end of the first half, where feels like these teams might be in a little bit of different directions lately, but I'm sure we can get into that.
Katie, 2 doubleheaders for the Cardinals in a span of, what is this, 4 days? It's going to be. I just want to know how's your mental health?
Well, I'm glad this isn't a video podcast, because that would answer the question. It's a grind, you guys, and you know this just as well as I do. I feel like the 10 days before the All-Star break feel like an actual month. And just going around the Cardinals clubhouse, everyone's on the same page. Just get through the next 4 or 5 days, and we have 4 days off, and then everything will be fine. But I feel like I'm personally crawling to that finish line.
Well, it's funny because I think the last time we saw you was, well, obviously time is all blending together right now, but like the Cardinals were toast, the Cubs weren't quite toast, and then the Cubs played way worse. And I think I'd kind of circled this upcoming weekend as like, all right, 2 sellers, there'll be lots of scouts there to see like how have the Cardinals turned it around. Obviously the standards of the National League are a little bit lower, but like they're sort of legit.
Yeah, they're playing good baseball, and they're doing so, most surprisingly, in my opinion, without good or even really average seasons from Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado, right? Like, coming into the season, every projection was virtually the Cardinals have to have good seasons from those two, otherwise they just simply won't be good. And I think Goldschmidt and Arenado would be the first to say that their seasons have not been good, yet the Cardinals have found themselves like one of baseball's best teams since the middle of May. And I think that's kind of a twofold thing. One, their pitching is so much better than last year. And it's actually funny when you look at the stats, their rotation ERA actually ranks like under league average in terms of performance. But the bar was so low in 2023 that this new and improved rotation of Sonny Gray, who has been exactly what this Cardinals team needed, Kyle Gibson, I think one of their most underrated signings in baseball, and then Lance Lynn and Miles Michaelis just kind of figuring things out. So much better. It's provided kind of as long as they're able to put together quality starts, which more often than not those 4 do, they have the tools to hold on and win ball games. Now, they're not blowing teams out. I think the Cardinals have the slimmest victory margin in the National League. They play a lot of one-run games. It's Ollie Marmol's favorite thing. He loves talking about it, how much he loves those one-run victories. But they're able to win because they have a great bullpen, an all-star closer, Ryan Helsley, the saves leader. And they've had some guys that were originally projected to be depth pieces, maybe that they'd call up from AAA from time to time, step up and perform. And in my opinion, that's Alec Burleson, who went from maybe making the opening day roster to their everyday number 2 hitter, averaged close to 285, team leader in RBIs, hit 15 home runs already. They've had just key guys step up that maybe they weren't projecting, and they've overall just been able to play a much more consistent brand of baseball. And again, they're doing so without Goldschmidt and Arenado's consistent performance. And I think that's giving the team a little bit more confidence in a weird way, because it shows like, hey, our stars are, not performing the way they want to, but we can still win in that regard.
Katie, obviously Willson Contreras just came back. He's a hot button topic in Chicago. Before we get to him, this team is slowly getting healthier. I think there's I read that there may be more players coming back. How much does like a guy like Tommy Edman matter? There's other players that are kind of borderline coming back. How healthy are they about to get? Is that realistic? Are these players coming back, and how much of a difference would it make for them?
Yeah, getting Contreras back obviously huge, and I'm sure we'll talk about Willson a little bit more. Lars Nootbaar was activated on Monday. That was big for them too, just because he's a regular staple guy. Tommy Edman has been kind of the big piece that's missing. He's been out all year recovering from off-season wrist surgery, and you guys know how wrist surgery is, especially with hitters. It's like notoriously finicky. So Tommy's had a lot of start and go with his rehab. He's just began a rehab assignment in Double-A. It's going to be a lengthy one though, so the Cardinals have maybe like an ideal target date of when he could return, but they're not necessarily committing to it just because Tommy's had so many setbacks and because the injury itself is hard to predict. But talking to President of Baseball Operations John Mozeliak, he did say that he wants to see what his club looks like when healthy. Ideally, that's before the trade deadline, so he's better educated on what decisions he needs to make. But Tommy Edman is their big piece. Everyone else coming back, you think of maybe like Steven Matz. That's just kind of like a bonus. Maybe, maybe Steven will be healthy. We'll see. But right now, it seems like all eyes are on Tommy Edman to see what he can do to bolster that club. The Cardinals from the right side, especially against left-handed starters, has not been good offensively. So they'd like to see Tommy come back and perform a little bit. If not, I think the Cardinals could go out there and get like a right-handed bat for a rental for the end of the year.
I think it was Wilson's first trip back to Wrigley Field when he got scapegoated there for some last year for some general issues with the pitching staff. Like, obviously we saw it was really hard to watch his injury, trying to steal a strike there. Like, how is he doing, and how is he sort of fitting in the second year in St. Louis?
Remember 2023, how fun that was when the Cardinals were like, hey, here's our starting catcher that we just signed for like a franchise record deal. He's going to go back to Wrigley. And oh, by the way, not catching. We don't know when he's going to catch again, but no, he's not going to do it. That was really fun. That was a really cool experience for everyone. People really enjoyed that. And then, of course, the injury was brutal, too, especially because his April, I mean, to me, he was an early look for a potential all-star. He had a like high 950 OPS. He was virtually the only person in the lineup actually hitting the baseball out of the infield. And then you think about what Willson means to this club, and he's a fan favorite for sure. Fans love his passion. You guys might find this shocking, but the Cardinals aren't really like a very outgoing celebratory group, right?
I didn't notice that.
Cartwheels at their base. So to see that kind of fire from one player, it's different. Like, you guys know this, Cubs fans know this. Willson Contreras' passion is just different. And there's a reason why all the opposing teams hate him and his teammates love him. It's because he does stuff like that. And so he's fit in really well to the clubhouse. He more so just brings a consistent bat, and he brings this energy that the club needs, because they don't have a lot of outgoing celebratory personalities, and that's okay. If you're not comfortable doing it, don't try to force yourself into something you're not. But the guys, especially knowing what Willson went through last year, his pitchers especially, have really rallied behind him, and he's a strong voice in that clubhouse. So while year two did not get off to the start that he wanted in terms of injury, he's absolutely made a home in St. Louis, and I think both the fans and the clubhouse really respect him and have his back.
Yeah, I'm looking at his numbers and knowing what Cubs fans are getting from their catchers offensively. Even if even you can say whatever you want about Wilson's defense and what he does behind the plate, what you can measure, what you can't measure, all that stuff, throw it out the window. His offense is amazing. And listen, we're not going to rehash all the reasons why he's not a Cub, but it's clear impact on offense. And I always said this at the time, if he wanted to come back as a DH, that would have been worthwhile, because he's that talented offensively.
Eric Kratz here from FT. I'm a former athlete that really pays attention to his routine. And AG1 every morning before my workouts is something that gets my day going.
Hey, Braun here. AG1 is a foundational nutrition supplement that delivers daily nutrients and gut health support, and it's backed by multiple research studies, so you can trust what you're putting in your body.
Unlike other products which only test their ingredients in isolation, AG1 test their formula as a whole.
Ready for this stat? 97% of people in a research study felt more energy after 30 days of drinking AG1. If I had to recommend one product to support whole body health, it's AG1, and that's why FT is excited to have them as a new partner. Starting your journey with AG1 is a win. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3, K2, and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/foul. That's drinkag1.com/FOUL. Go check it out, FT fam.
Katie, how is this team going to get so you said that these two teams we're heading in opposite directions, and that's absolutely true, but the Cubs have won 5 of 6. The NL is so bad that they're actually somehow still in this. I still like have to triple check the standings to make sure it's not a fever dream, because it makes no sense. But the Cubs fans are going to want to know, like, can they get back in this for real this weekend? Especially pitching is going to be tough for both sides, I think, to get through. Does Wednesday's doubleheader impact this weekend at all for the Cardinals? What do they have stacked up? What can this offense that the Cubs hope is turning around expect?
Yeah, the more I think about it, the more this is a huge weekend for Chicago. Just thinking about where they are in the standings, the recent run they've been on, and just how much is at stake, because this division and just National League, I guess, is borderline mediocre. So you can be under 500 and still be well in it. So then Jed Hoyer has a really difficult decision to make. But I do think for St. Louis, their doubleheader on Wednesday made things more difficult for their 2-game series against the Royals, which they lost both games, but it actually set them up for success heading into the weekend, because they gave all 4 of their veteran starters, Sonny Gray, Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, Miles Michaelis, an extra day of rest, and they structured them so those 4 will pitch the 4 games over the weekend. Then, of course, they'll get a 27th man that will most likely be bullpen help. So they feel like they're in a good spot because, like I said earlier, those guys are really consistent in notching quality starts, and this offense looks a little bit better than how it did in April and May. Cubs and Cardinals had very similar offensive performances in the first 2 months. I felt like when I first saw the Cubs play against the Cardinals, I was like, I don't know which team is which. This looks exactly like what I've watched St. Louis do for the first 6 weeks. But I do think that St. Louis is set up in a really strong side from their pitching side. It's going to be, again, what do they get from the offense? But if St. Louis has a lead in the 7th, they feel really confident about that, even if it's just 1 run, because they have such a strong bullpen. So that's kind of where they feel they're confident, because they were able to reset their pitching. Didn't work out well for them in Kansas City, but they do feel much better about their odds going into the weekend against the Cubs.
Katie, how much pressure is this the Cardinals front office under to like deliver at the trade deadline?
I feel, it's a good question, because I feel like normal front office would feel a ton of pressure being 20 games under 500 last year, like a massive disappointment. And I obviously the Cardinals front office is under pressure, but like John Mozeliak is just simply not going to acknowledge that he's facing significant heat.
Yeah.
I think that's common sense, but he's going to operate under the things are fine, we're under control, we're in a good spot. But yeah, there's considerable pressure, because when you are the St. Louis Cardinals, and I know Cubs fans are so tired of this, I get it. You tout yourself as a winning franchise and, the Cardinal Way and all this rich history. You need to back that up with your actions. And you're allowed to have one bad season, of course, like the first losing season in 15 years in St. Louis. Okay, yeah, that's allowed. But you can't keep riding the coattails of your past success if you're not doing anything to improve the current future of your squad. And I do think the Cardinals are facing kind of an inflection point this season. That's why things felt so dire in May when they were like 9 games under 500, and I thought everyone was going to lose their jobs. And they turned it around. Now I think it's on the front office to ensure that they're not just like playoff, like they're in contention to be a playoff team, that they're a playoff caliber team. I'm not saying that the front office has to go out and make the Cardinals match the Phillies, but there are clear weaknesses for this squad. You have a division that's very winnable and postseason berths that are very attainable. Why not give your team the best chance not to make the postseason, but to put in a significant performance? Like we all know with expanded playoffs, you get in, no one knows what can happen. I understand some front offices' reluctancy to go all in because of the randomness of this expanded playoff format. But the Cardinals have had a lot to lose. They haven't won a playoff season or a playoff series since 2020. I've never covered a playoff win. I've heard they're fun. Wouldn't know. So I do think there is pressure when you think about how bad they were last year and the inflection point of the season. St. Louis fans are annoyed. They're upset. They're frustrated. So a good trade deadline would go a long way in ensuring that fans are confident about this team, but more importantly, that the organization is confident about this team going forward.
Well, as far as covering playoff wins, it's been a while, but I can tell you this: once you do it and do a deep run, you'll that November GM meetings that we meet at, you'll be. You say you're drained right now. If you cover a deep run, you'll be going insane at the GM meetings if you have to go. You'll be like, why am I here? I haven't slept for a month straight. What is happening right now? Especially if it's in like Vegas or something like that. It's miserable. But I'm curious back to the actual Cardinals. So you talked about Goldschmidt and Arenado not performing up to what we expect them to be. Are there any signs of them coming out of it? Do you feel confident either one of them can kind of get out of this rut, or is this just the natural aging process kind of catching up to them perhaps?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's something that the Cardinals are asking themselves. And if there are two people on the team that have earned the right for an extended trust or trial period based on their careers, it's obviously Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. And no one's doubting their work ethic or their hustle. I mean, I see them show up at the ballpark first thing every day. Goldschmidt's out there taking early BP at 1 o'clock at like 100 degrees in St. Louis. I'm like, come on, man. I know you're tired. So it's difficult because they are the cornerstones of the club. The organization pledged like $60 million to them this year, and they're the two most respected people in the clubhouse. But in terms of what you're seeing from their batted ball metrics and their overall quality of at bats, Arenado looks a little bit better. Goldschmidt kind of like bits and pieces. I think in Nolan's case specifically, this is a guy that's played through some aches and pains, has like explicitly said he does not feel good. It sucks to play hurt. He's looking to just go into the All-Star break and reset. I think Goldschmidt's going to take that same mentality too. I will say this: in DC last week, Ollie Marmol, the manager, was sitting talking to reporters, and he was like, write this down. These two guys are going to help us win ball games in the second half. So there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of respect for those two. Obviously, it's going to come down to what they can do at the plate. But right now, batted ball metrics don't suggest a huge turnaround. But it's baseball. Things can change. Just a disappointing first half for both of those two.
Katie, we love reading your coverage in the Athletic. I liked your Mozeliak impersonation, and that definitely comes across in your coverage. And like, I'm just wondering if, I don't know, the Cardinals have great players who are aging maybe rapidly. A manager who was given an extension, but wasn't some like huge commitment. And it's not like he has like a ton of like experience at the major league level. You alluded to like kind of the fatigue with the front office or maybe the motto. Like, where is this heading? Or like, what if they don't make it to October? Explain kind of that, well, you put well, that inflection point that they're nearing, kind of like the reckoning that the Cubs had talked about kind of towards the end of Theo's term.
Yeah, I don't think this organization knows where it's going after, if things turn south, they don't make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mo is under contract through the 2025 season. He's said that he plans on stepping down and rescinding some of his responsibilities, taking a step away after that. Now, he also said that coming into 2023. So we will see, because he's still here. And, I'm not like taking a shot at him by any means. His career speaks for himself. But the Cardinals have a lot to address, not just with their current roster, which is a little bit on the older side. They also have an outdated model in player development. They're drafting in the top 10 this Sunday for the first time since 1998.
Wow.
It's a very long time. And there's significant pressure to make sure they get that pick right. And there's also pressure to make sure they have the development internally to make sure their minor league systems continue to prosper. And I think that's part of the reason why Chaim Bloom was brought in to help with player development. I mean, the Cardinals used to set the standard in how to develop players and, draft homegrown talent, not even from the top ranks, but middle of the pack, and turn out everyday players. And it's been a while since the Cardinals consistently did that. I do think overall the organization is a little outdated. And I think that really caught up to them in 2023 when everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong and then some. So winning in 2024 fixes the temporary problem of rebounding from a horrible season and trying to get the team back on track. But I think the bigger answers the Cardinals have to see, regardless of how they finish the 2024 season, it's internally. It's with their player development. It's, what kind of advancements can they make with the front office? What's it going to look like when/if Mo steps away? And those are things that can't be answered over the course of, 1 to 2 months. You're looking at a serious organization rehaul, and I'm not quite sure they know which direction to go about just yet.
Wow.
Katie, this is my last question, but you just made me think about this. I think Jordan Walker's really struggling in AAA. I did not expect. Listen, the struggles in the majors, it's normal for a kid his age. I get that. What's happening there? Are they trying to change something, and this is the part of the process where he's struggling? I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, I get guys mixed up, but I think he hits the ball hard and he was hitting it on the ground too much. So are they trying to change contact point? Are they changing something, or is this just a kid going through it right now and possibly, who knows what type of future he has? But what are they working on with him?
Yeah, those are the exact two things that they want to work on. They like that he hits the ball hard. They don't like that he hits the ball on the ground so consistently. And it's unfortunate because you drive around Busch Stadium, there are Jordan Walker posters all over the place. Like, he was firmly expected to be. It's sad, actually. Every time I see it, it's like right by the parking lot too. I see it every day. And I'm like, oh, nice guy too. Seriously, so nice. But they were like firmly expecting Jordan to be like their supplementary power. Like, you had Contreras, Arenado, Goldschmidt, and then Jordan Walker, Lars Nootbaar, Nolan Gorman. He was expected to be an everyday guy, even if his defense in the outfield was not necessarily the best. They believed he had the bat skills to make up for it. And spring training, he did not look good. It's spring training, though. Then in April, got progressively worse, where he was missing on virtually every slider down and away, and opposing pitchers just kept hammering that spot. So he just was completely lost. And the hope was, when they optioned him in April, it would be a little bit. It wasn't going to be like a quick go on a heater in Memphis and we'll call you back up. It was, you have some issues you need to work through with your swing. You want to get your line drive rate up, your ground ball rate down, work on elevation, launch angle. And the same problems still accompanied in AAA when the pitching is much less competitive. Walker has an OPS under 700 in Memphis right now. So now it's looking like a complete swing rehaul where, he's not even close to consideration and being called up in the second half unless something wild happens. And it's disappointing because it's essentially a lost year for Jordan.
Yeah, prospects in general, right? Top 20 guy suddenly turning into a sub 700 guy in AAA is just very, very odd to see. It's not unheard of, but it happens. But especially with the Cardinals, it's very odd to see. Yes. Cubs fans are probably shocked because every random guy that's called up seems to crush the Cubs. Katie, thanks so much for joining us. I've said this about our previous guests, but the Athletic is lucky to have so many young, brilliant writers, and you're among the standouts. There's a reason you're working with Will and Patrick to gather information ahead of the trade deadline. Like, you stand out among the ability to make connections and really talk to people. You understand what this business is about. You understand what our jobs are about, and it's becoming rare. It's not becoming rare. It's always rare with young writers. We need. It takes a while for people to figure it out. You figured it out so quickly in the middle of a pandemic too. Let's not forget that. That's when you started. So I want to say I'm always impressed by your work, how quickly you've turned into a standout beat writer on a really tough beat. Thanks so much for joining us, Katie.
That was so nice, guys. Thank you. I learned from the best, you two included. It's nice to have so many awesome and amazing coworkers that I read every day. It makes me better. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing at least one of you this weekend. It should be fun. But my one complaint is I'm once again not seeing Shota 4 games, and I still don't get to see him. I'm tired of it.
Right.
I'm tired of it.
I'm on the Shota plan. I need some extra rest. So this is the Sahadev problem this weekend.
Thanks so much, Katie.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for listening to Northside Territory. Thanks to Katie Wu, our great Cardinals beat writer at The Athletic, for coming on the show. Always informative and helping us out know what's going on in St. Louis with the Cardinals. A huge series here this weekend for the Cubs if they can really make some noise and get back in this thing. Thanks to all of you for listening. Make sure to rate, review, subscribe, do all those things that you do for podcasts. Spread the word if you can. We want as many Cubs fans listening as possible. Even if you're just a baseball fan, we want you listening. Make sure to subscribe to The Athletic. Read Patrick and my work. We are on top of this suddenly red-hot Cubs team that, if they're getting back in it, we'll be on top of it. If they're selling at the deadline, we'll be on top of it. Whatever happens, we will be there for you and making sure you're as informed as possible. Thanks to Patrick, who is likely flying back from Baltimore, if not already home. And while you're listening to this, I'm probably driving out to St. Louis. So wish me luck in the heat. I'm not looking forward to that, but maybe the Cubs make it, interesting and fun to be out there. And I'll have a fun 4 games to cover in 3 days. Thanks for listening, everyone. Take care.